back in when was it? Sort of 2020. I was really struggling. So like my marriage broke down, my dog died, and my dad died, all in a short space of time. I was like in this really dark hole, and I couldn't get myself out of it. And I was, after everything I've done, like I didn't want to feel that pain. I planned to take my own life. When I was thinking about taking my own life, it wasn't that I didn't really want to live. Like, I love life, I love people, I love having an impact. It was, I didn't want the pain. The breathwork cannot lie. It gets to the truth of you. Just feeling of, actually, it doesn't matter what happens to me, I'll be okay. And for someone who's felt not okay and not enough their whole life, that is pretty fucking powerful. If you want a tool to help you let go, all sorts of things you can do to your breath to change which part of your nervous system reacts. And the main parts are
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. We're sharing the stories of our guests. I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey. Okay, I'm just going to say something about one of our sponsors, Riverval. The world of cars, vans and minibuses is often a pain point for many of us. The hassle of finding the right vehicle, let alone looking after it, are all more things to add to our lists as busy people. Riverval's mission is to make motoring manageable, and that's why they provide leasing, purchasing, servicing and vehicle management. So whether you have one family car or a fleet of vans for your business, Riverval are your trusted vehicle supplier. Visit www.riverval.co.uk. Okay, let's jump back to the podcast. Okay, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Delighted to welcome the inspirational, the wonderful Sam Adams. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Sam. Thank you for inviting me on your podcast. A true honour.
Oh, listen, the honour is mine. I'm so excited to have you. Look, we've known each other for a little while. Follow you're obviously on socials, and you're always just such inspiring posts, and the work you're doing, especially within breathwork, is game changing.
Thank you.
It's amazing to have you on.
No, I looking at the list of people that have come before me, I do feel very honoured. So yeah,
Amazing.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that.
We're going to jump straight in.
Yeah,
let's
do it. Let's do it.
Let's kick off the big question. How do you define success? What's it mean to you?
The number one question that everyone gets, right?
Absolutely.
How do I define success?
Yeah.
I guess it's changed over the years. Definitely changed. I never felt successful, and I probably would say now, because I still have this old narrative in my head about, success is, that notoriety, that, big impact, lots of people, what we've been, I'm a kid, I'm a lot older than you, Sam. I've been around the block a little bit, and, it was all about the money and the things, and, I'm not going to lie, like, I always wanted those nice, shiny things, and I felt like that was success. But having been through some really big struggles of my own, actually success is staying on the planet. But not just staying on the planet, but staying on the planet and being content and fulfilled. Because, if you're what you're doing with your life, work, personal, whatever, if you're not enjoying it, I'm not saying you can feel happy and positive 100% of the time. You can't. But if there's not a level of contentment and fulfillment from that and meaning, what's the point? Really, what's the point? Because having had some little mini wins and goals and successes in life, you know what happens when you get those wins and successes? You move on to the next one. And so the wins and successes are very small. If you look at the journey as a scale of 100%, the wins and successes are about 10, 20%, say. So that means the process, the journey, the living, the doing is 80% of it. And so the biggest, we tend not to focus on that. I didn't. It was all about the winning and the success, you know, what we deem as success. But 80% of it is the doing and the process and the journey. And I've worked with some incredible athletes, Olympians, and you know, I know for a conversation I had with an Olympian was that when they attained one of their greatest achievements, that it was so fleeting and they barely remember it, that and then they're on to the next thing, that it was just almost pointless. Like almost pointless. So you know, you head for these goals. I'm not saying don't have goals, like I've got goals, but I think we inflate how it's going to make us feel, and I've learned the hard way from that. So success for me is waking up every day with breath in my body and peace of mind, and being in a content, fulfilled place in my life, which I currently am, and I'm grateful for that. Not having had peace of mind, for me, that is, I write in my journal every day, and I write about my ideal day, and the first thing I write on my ideal day every day is that I have a happy, peaceful mind. Because without that, there is no success. There is nothing else that comes after that, because life is just foggy, hazy mess. That was a long answer to a short question.
I love that, and there's so much, like listening to that. There's so much that I've heard from people on the put, like you said about the Olympians. I've had a couple on here, or I've had, you know, uber successful, financially successful business people have come on, and you're right, like not one of them has said about that. There's that big euphoria moment, right? You get there and you go, oh, that's it. Like, whether it is standing on top of a podium, whether it is going, I've just sold my business for 90, 100, 50 million, whatever, and you think, oh, that's it. Everything's like, it's not. There's not, and like you said, it lasts. I think for me, there was. I've referenced a few times on here. Johnny Wilkinson described it the best. Like that kicking that Rugby World Cup goal was for him the pinnacle of everything in his life had been geared up to that, and yet it lasted for about 30 seconds, and then you're on a spiral, right? Afterwards. So like, I've had so many conversations about that, and listening to you talk about that. Why is it then as society we're still that the narrative or the message out there is still that when you get there?
Yeah, and society right now is we're more disconnected than ever. You know, we've got all of these tools to make life easier for us, supposedly, you know, all these gadgets, iPhones, watches, you know, supposedly making our life easier, and but we're actually more connected. We have more anxiety, we have more stress, we have more loneliness than ever before. And these are, you know, they're hollow victories sometimes, some of these big successes. So I don't know why society is... we still place a lot of, you know, store on the fact that, you know, when it comes, I'm a big sport fan, as you know, I work with a lot of athletes, and, you know, while we put so much store on winning these trophies and these medals, or having a big business or big financial success, because they are very hollow in my experience. I'm not saying I don't want the big house and, you know, the big bank. Of course I do, because it gives you more freedom, right? And you can help more people. But there's a lot that comes with that. And I've met many people that are, you know, one of my clients right now, super wealthy, got an amazing business, but are they happy? Are they content? Actually, they actually hate their work. And from the outside in, you'd think this person is hugely successful. But there's no fulfillment and there's no contentment, and that financial stuff actually is a huge burden for them. You know, I don't know why we still place so much on these kind of trophies and accolades. Maybe you can answer that, Sam. I don't know.
I guess for me, like again, listen, like, I think of someone like Chris Goodman, who's become a really good friend of mine since being on the podcast, and he's like, worth millions, like that. Well, whatever they sold, I think it was turning over 140 million. Focus group when they sold 25% of it during lockdown. So realised all his financial dreams, and yet exactly that, he was suffering from depression, anxiety, because he describes it so brilliantly, where he says, I was climbing this corporate ladder, got to the top, realised that my ladder was up against the wrong wall.
God.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, how many times do we hear that?
Yeah.
We hear these type of things where you go, and I do. We spoke offline before, and I talk about my kids a lot, and I'm like, one thing I'm trying to get into them, just love what you do, whatever it is, just anything you're passionate about, lean into that.
And I think that, and I know you're doing this with your kids. You know, I have great parents. Sadly, my dad's no longer with us, but you know, I don't think anyone really cared if I was happy as a kid. And that sounds a really harsh thing to say. I'm sure my mum did care, but I didn't hear that. Like, what are you interested in? What do you like? What's going to make you happy? There wasn't that kind of encouragement. But there wasn't the other encouragement either, that you got to go to school and get good grades and go to college and uni. There wasn't that message. There was sort of almost like I was stuck in the middle. It was like that nothingness almost. Sounds really harsh, but anyway. But there wasn't that encouragement to express myself how I wanted to express myself, which I absolutely didn't growing up. You know, I was gay. I didn't really realise that until I was... Well, I think I always knew it, but... You know, I was a teenager, but of course, you know, I'm talking about the 80s. The only person I knew who was gay was Elton John. It was like, you know, so I couldn't be myself. And nobody really cared, I don't think. It felt like no one cared anyway. For me, I've gone off on a tangent a bit here, but I think, like, where we begin, it's the early part, isn't it, where we get these messages of what success looks like. And I guess I, you know, like many people, didn't feel enough. I lived in a white town. We were the only black family. I also knew that I was gay, so that was, you know, in my head a lot. I just wanted to fit in. You want to fit in. You want to be liked, right? So what are the messages you're hearing? You know, I was about survival, really. I was sexually abused as a kid as well, so I had all that shit going on. It's the messages that we're hearing early in life from our caregivers, from our peers, from whether we're part of a religion or whatever. It's those messages that we're hearing that, and so I guess, are we still feeding that in schools? Are we still feeding this message of, you know, successes, you know, trophies, winning? And if you look at it, when you look at elite footballers or tennis players, like, we hold these people in such high regard. So what are we showing our younger people? That actually, to be someone who's held in high regard, and let's be honest, we're human, we want to be held in high regard. I do, you do, you know, you've got to achieve something, like, you know, win a trophy, win a whatever, have a big business. We're still feeding that in the media and social media. And probably you and I and people like us, we're trying to kind of flip that narrative of, like, because we've been through some tough shit, is like, actually, that's hollow victories, and what it takes to get there. And, you know, I've stood on one of the most beautiful beaches in the world, in an island called Anguilla, which is where my mum's from. And, you know, anyway, you think, oh, I'm in paradise. Like, it's 30 degrees. The water is crystal clear, white as sand you could ever want. You know, pineapple with a beautiful drink in it. Was I happy? No. Because that inner stuff is the stuff that counts. That your reflection of the world comes from your inner view, and doesn't matter where you are. So it doesn't matter if you win a trophy, you've got 10 million in the bank, you sell your business for 100 million or whatever. It's all hollow if the inside isn't sound.
Yeah, wow. And I think that what I'm realising is that so much of those questions that we ask ourselves, who am I really? We don't tend to ask ourselves until it's later in life, or that they call it midlife crisis or whatever it is. But it's when we get to that midlife thing, we start asking those questions. Why is it that? And are those questions too big to ask someone when you're a child, when you're a teenager? Do we know who we are when we're that age?
Yeah.
Is it? But I guess for me, again, a lot of the learnings has come from actually as an individual, recognising what values are and putting maybe what your values are, what you believe in, and create other stuff around that. Because actually that doesn't change. If you go, these are my values and this is what I believe as a human being, then the work and stuff you do, does it align with those values? If it does, then that's good. I think I'll be honest, I've only started recognising that and realising that in this latter part from starting doing the podcast, right? You start listening and you're understanding, but damn, what do I believe in? What's my purpose? Like, this has helped me to create a mission and a purpose. I feel like I've got a real and of course, it makes a lot of the stuff I talk about makes it sound like I think money's not. Of course, money's important. Of course, we need money to survive. Of course, I want more of it but I want it to have. I believe I've got enough. What I've got right now is enough. You know, I don't need anything else. Of course, I'd love a bigger house. Of course, I'd love to be able to, if I wanted to, put the kids through private school. If I wanted to do that. If I wanted to go on holiday 3 or 4 times, I'd like to have them things. Don't need those things. I'd like to have them things. But I believe because I get up every day and I love the things I do pretty much every day, the stuff I do, whether it be this, hosting events, top table stuff, get human connection, all of the things I have the joy of doing, well, I love them things, then that's okay, isn't it? That for me is I guess success, and money will become a byproduct of doing the things I believe in.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that narrative needs to change maybe, and people need to recognise it. And I think I'm just wondering whether it is that from a young age we can in some way adapt it so that they start to ask them questions at a young age, don't they?
Yeah, and it's difficult, isn't it, when you've got, I've got, my kids are grown up, but, it's allowing kids to express themselves and, which I think, we were talking about this before, weren't we, about school, school is designed one way, and we're learning, I think we are learning, that we all function very differently. There's a lot of talk about neurodivergence. Both my kids are autistic. They learn in very different ways, but we all learn in very different ways, and school needs to be more flexible and more adaptable to that. And it isn't. If you don't fit into, when I was at school, if you didn't fit in a box or you did something right, you got the slipper or the cane. I'm that old. But it's because they expected this is just one way to learn, and this is how you learn. And like I said before, there wasn't any no one cared if I was happy in school. Like I said, no one cared. It was like, this is how we do it, and you have to do it this way. And if you read my school report, it says I was aggressive, which really pains me to read, actually. Actually, first time I read it as an adult, which wasn't that long ago, I cried. I was like, no, I wasn't aggressive. I was struggling. I was in pain. I was, nobody was asking the reasons for that. Because actually, I came from a good family. My parents were good. So why was this kid showing up at school aggressive? And it's paying attention to each individual child, which I get is difficult in schools. But I think we need to have allow children to be children, to be how they want to be, to do the things they want to do, what's making them happy, and making them understand, success really is about joy and happiness. We can't be joyful and happy all the time, but how can we feel content with ourselves? And generally that comes from being ourselves. There's a lot of talk about that on social media. Just be yourself. Well, that's easier said than done if you've been pushed back your whole life to not be yourself, or you felt
and not know who yourself maybe is.
You don't know who you are. You don't even know how to start that journey. Where does that journey begin? But equally, you might be afraid to be yourself. Like growing up, I was I'm black. Clearly, I'm black. I've got a black mum, white dad. I couldn't avoid that. I'd have given anything as a child not to have been black, because it just made me stand out and get picked on. But also then being gay, it was like, I don't want to be gay. I had to hide. I felt like I had to hide that for safety. I felt like I'd be ostracised by my family. All I ever heard was negative language around being gay. So it was something that I felt like I had to hide. And until we get to a place in this bloody planet where we realise that human beings are human beings, we are just human beings, regardless of gender or whatever bloody label you want to put on it. We all have blood running through our veins. We all have something in common, and that's the air that we breathe. Like, you and I are sharing the same air, right? Like, there's no getting away from that. I've got your air, you've got mine, whether you like it or not, whether you don't like the colour of my skin or that I'm gay or whatever. Do you know what I mean? You're sharing something with me. We've all got so much in common, and we're all sharing this freaking airspace, this precious airspace. And we have to just allow people to be people, as long as they're, even if they are, doing harm. There'll be a reason. There'll be a pain behind that harm. That pain and that harm comes from suffering. My aggression as a kid growing up came from suffering, but nobody bothered to ask. And letting kids express themselves, like they're finding their identity, like we all bloody are. Like, is it ever fixed? Is it ever like, this is me? Well, this is me right now. A bit like, I reckon we're on a similar page. We feel good in the work that we do. We feel confident about our values. We know who we are. And we're more concerned about showing up authentically, feeling good within ourselves, and having a meaningful work life. Like, I think we're on the same page with that. And it's a bloody great place to be, right? 100%. But it's a hell of a journey to get there. And we need to be doing some of that stuff earlier in life with the kids. And recognising that, just because your kid wants to do this now doesn't mean they'll always want to do it. One of my friends, her son, thought that he wanted to be a girl, and that was for about 3 years of their life, and they just like, and he wasn't young. He was, I said wasn't young, about 13, which is not easy in school in today's society, and the honestly, it was horrific what they all went through as a family. And then, like, now, a bit older, he has decided, him, those are my pronouns, and, back to being who he was. I won't name him, as he was assigned at birth, kind of thing. So, but that beautiful family just embraced that and just let their kid be their kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I grew up, like, when I didn't come out till I was 25 to my parents, but my parents weren't happy for me to be who I was. And
what wasn't?
Sorry?
It wasn't happy for you?
No, they didn't speak to me for not too long, a few months, but it's rejection at the end of the day, isn't it? And that's very hard at any age. And as for me, growing up, I felt a hell of a lot of rejection for the colour of my skin. So then I hid my sexuality, because I knew there would be more rejection. Although I didn't label it as that as a kid, and growing up, it's only as an adult, having done all the work, I realised what it was, and why I struggle with rejection now. But, I just think, I'm going a long way around it, but I think we just have to be more open to letting kids be kids. How they want to dress, what they want to do, if they want to play with Tonka toys today and Barbie dolls tomorrow, if they want, do you know what I mean? If they want to pick up slugs and bugs and, and that gives them joy and they're fascinated by that, allow them to be creative. It's the most expressive, creative time of your life when you're a child. And I think there's just too much stifling of that. No, like, this is what girls play with, this is what boys play with, this is what girls do, this is what boys do. That was how I was brought up. Well, actually, what do you do? What do you like doing? That's how kids find their values. They're not going to label it like that. That's how they find what's meaningful for all of us. It's just like, what do you like doing? How does it make you feel inside? If it makes you feel good inside and you're not hurting anyone, go do it. And that might change tomorrow, and that's okay, because we're not fixed.
It's such a brilliant, beautiful message. I listen to that, I've spoke openly about, our journey and with Lucy, and she's just the most beautiful human being. Since she was 18 months, since she's a good point, I want to wear a dress, and I'm born biologically a boy, and but that's who she, and she has opened my eyes to this world and showed me what a beautiful place it can be if we looked at it through that eyes. And my fear, everything comes from a place of fear with her, because my fear is the world doesn't see her like that. And as much as I'd love to go where and I put a post up only a few weeks back after the Supreme Court ruling, just saying I feel like we've gone backwards in humanity, because I really do. And when you got your 10-year-old asking you those questions, I get emotional about it, but why can't the world just see me as I am? You go, it just does,
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart. And I'm like, and I can see the stuff and that she's going through, and we're in this lovely little bubble where we are. It's all this beautiful, but I know that there's going to be challenges ahead of her, and I know that, and I just want, and as much as I want to protect her and wrap her in cotton wool and not letting it out, I can't do that, and I've got to build her resilience, and I've got to encourage her to be confident and believe. But she categorically knows who she is inside. Like her emotional intelligence, we were talking about a bit offline earlier about her emotional intelligence for a 10-year-old is off the charts. Like she is incredible, gets it, just gets it, and knows who she is. You know what I mean? So when you look at yourself as an individual, asking these questions that we are in later life, and she's doing that now, going, I know I am, and that is just.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
like, you know, because she's in an environment where you're allowing her to express herself and be okay with that.
I hope so. But yeah,
I think it sounds like you are.
So, yeah, well, I'm really keen if we can. Like, I always like you've alluded to a couple of bits there. So talk to me a little bit about, I guess, the impacts of that, and a little bit more about growing up and how that's impacted you in later life. I guess that period of time, just go back to that period and talk, especially like you said, obviously being black and then being gay and suppressing a lot of those feelings. Just how's that impacted you later on, do you think?
Oh, that's a big question, Sam. Yeah, I think it's had a huge impact. Obviously, like our childhood on all of us has a big impact, doesn't it? On how life plays out as adults. I always felt like I never fitted in. That's my journey. It's interesting because I've had some more recent conversations with my sister. She's a couple of years older than me, and we know she doesn't. I do all the talking in our family. She doesn't do it. But it's interesting to talk to her about how that felt for her actually, and she felt very similar. That she didn't fit in, and we heard some not nice things growing up. A lot of subtle racism, a lot of just in your face racism, getting on the school bus and things like that, getting called not nice things. And don't get me wrong, I had friends, and but you just always feel like you're on the outside and you're not accepted for just something you cannot physically change about how you look. And I always wanted to dampen down all of that. I didn't want my hair to be too big. I didn't want to go out with my mum. This is one thing I really did in therapy, was that because I had a lot of guilt around, like as a kid, I never wanted to be seen out with my mum. My mum's a lot darker than me. For me, it was just like, that's amplifying the fact that I'm black. That's how I felt growing up. Like, not that my mum, I love my mum, but that's taken a lot of therapy to do that. So it's, it's like, the impact and obviously abuse as well. And I faced, I had a real crisis point in my early 20s. I had depression, and that was around dealing with my sexuality. I was due to be getting married to a man, and obviously my sexuality had come up, and the abuse was really playing on my mind, because I'd never spoken to anybody about that. So I ended up in therapy, and that really massively helped me get through that really turbulent time. But the lasting impact is, and I still feel it today, all of this time later, that, like I said just a minute ago, was that rejection, like it's ingrained. The body, the famous book, The Body Holds the Score, and I know it through breathwork and all the breathwork stuff I use with clients and everybody. The body does not forget. Like, my body remembers the rejection, the hurt. Like, even if I'm not, thinking about it in my brain, or there's thoughts, if something happens, I feel it physically. Like, and it's only in these last few years of doing breath work and stuff like that I really have started to I can notice those sensations, or maybe I had them before and I just didn't really know what they were. But whereas now it's like, oh yeah, that's from little me. Do you know? That's like 10-year-old me, or getting on the school bus being called something unpleasant, or that's rejection. So if rejection shows up in even like some smaller ways in life as an adult, it's like, but now I can address it, because I'm like, oh, okay, that's just from back then. You're okay. You're good now. You could. Do you know what I mean? It's so it has a long lasting effect, but I just have better tools and better ways of dealing with it. And a lot of therapies help me make sense of it, and a lot of breath work has helped me understand how my body's reacting and why it's reacting, and that actually I'm safe and I'm okay. Whereas as a child, it was like I wasn't okay, but I didn't have anywhere to put that or anyone to talk to about that. So yeah, the impact has been huge, and then being abused as a child, my family, my sister knows. None of my nieces and things know, but I talk about it openly. My mum actually doesn't know. She's unlikely to listen to this. Sorry, Sam.
I'll send it to her.
Yeah, here's something for you. But I just never wanted to share that with her and give that pain to her. I think. I lost my train of thought now. Where I was going now. I think. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I'm saying you're talking about obviously that being abused, but I guess at a young age, and not being able to share that with, especially like you said, with your mum or dad, and being able to, that's a lot to hold in.
Yeah, do you know what, Sam? I just thought that I saw a clip by Gabor Mate. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's incredible.
And he was talking about the abuse not being the trauma. The trauma was that I wasn't in a safe enough environment to share what was happening to me. That's like, ooh. And I only heard that not that long ago, a year ago maybe, but that really landed for me. And I don't say that to criticise my family or my parents, because there was a lot of people, it takes a village, right, to raise a kid. I was in school, I was doing athletics, there was lots of people in my world. But the abuse wasn't a trauma. I didn't have a safe enough place to share that. I was just like, wow, which is true.
Do you think that because you're like, again, not putting blame, but again, it's something we mentioned earlier, but actually that your parents just didn't have the skills or the toolkit
and that's
to be
what I mean.
to create that environment for you, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know if we said this live or we said it before, but it's like my parents did the best they did with the tools they had, physically, emotionally and mentally, with what they had. And at the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive. And they were doing the same. My mum and dad met in the late 50s, a black woman and a white man. It weren't easy. You know what I mean? So they did the best they can, and there's no blame on them. But, they learnt the skills they learnt from their family, and it goes down the chain, doesn't it? Generations, ancestors and everything. So, yeah, they did the best they can. But I wasn't brought up in an environment where it was good to talk. Let's talk about it. Like my dad, to the day he died, never once told me he loved me, never came to give me a hug. And that is something I have craved my whole life. I craved the shit out of that. I really did. And I had to find a way for it. It wasn't that my dad didn't love me. He showed me in many other ways. He was a man of, he liked to do acts for you. He'd come and help me do up houses. So I used to be in property, and he'd come and help me fix up houses. All work 12, 14-hour days. He showed his love in very different ways. Just not I love you, so I'm proud of you. Come and give us a hug. None of that. So there was no space for me to go to him and say, hey, this is what's happening. Or with my mum. My mum just is quite quiet, quite stoic. Wasn't even to this day, so that wasn't that environment, and the school wasn't that environment either. Like I said, I was just told I was aggressive. Well, there was a reason I was aggressive. I was in pain, so it has had a lasting impact on me in terms of I still feel a lot of rejection. I still feel not good enough. I still walk in a lot of environments, and I'm the only black person in the room, and that is something I feel very physically. Growing up, and I've had a conversation with my sister about this recently, about, as a kid, every environment I walked into, we stood out. And it was very different back then because, Brighton's not that diverse, but we do have a little bit more diversity. And back then, there wasn't any. So every classroom, every gym room, every shop, every disco, every bus ride, walking at you likely are that we were the only black kids, so you felt that very much of every environment that you walked in. You just felt it, that you stood out, and it was very uncomfortable. And still to this day, if I, not so much because I'm very proud of who I am and my heritage, and that took a long time to get to that point. But I still sometimes walk into an environment and think, shit, I'm the only black person in here, or I'm only the only person of colour. And growing up, that was really challenging. I still feel it now, but I manage it much better now, if you know what I mean. It's like, that's the difference.
How do you manage it? But again, back to, I guess, I've had Kevin Smith, who's been on the podcast, who obviously I was in the first steering group with Brighton United and what he's trying to, and he really highlighted something for me, because I think you, like, especially living in Brighton, which is an amazing place, and we go, the most inclusive place in the world, we've got this bubble, and blah, but actually, when it comes to diversity, there is a lack of, like, he said, like, stand, like, and it broke my heart when he sat opposite me. He said, I stood in a room, and he's a big, tall black
He's
guy.
a big guy,
he's a big guy. And he goes, "What these dreads?" And I was standing there. I'm not the most inconspicuous person. I stood there, and people just walked past me, like, when we goes, because I was the only person. I was the only black or brown person in the room. And he said, I looked and said it, and there's such a huge difference between. But this was highlighted for me. There's a huge difference between being welcome and feeling like you belong.
Yeah, he's nailed that.
And I think that just hit me, because I'm like, for someone that hosts events, and I look around and I'm like, of course everyone's welcome.
Yeah.
Whether you're black, brown, or man, woman, whatever. Everyone's welcome, of course. But if I've not created, been back to creating environments, safe environment. If I'm not creating an environment where you feel like you belong, then that's on me. I'm doing something wrong. And I need to look at that, and whether it's messaging, whether it's approach, whether it's including more people. And that's why Brighton United, I think, was such a brilliant thing to have started. And they've got my full support, and we're doing stuff in the magazine, load of other stuff. But I just think that I can't, for a white middle-aged man, I can't even comprehend what that feels like, to feel like.
Yeah, it's my partner, she's white, and we've had some conversations, because like, even me just sharing that about every environment I walked into as a kid, I felt like I stood out, and even now. And it's interesting, some of the conversations we've had over the last few years about how I feel in certain situations, and she's become much more aware of language and environments, and we'll go, I go to a lot of events and things, I'm out there speaking up about certain things and trying to have impact. Sometimes she'll come along to support me, and I'll rock up and I'm going to speak, or and someone doesn't know me, they won't come to me, they'll go to her. And it happened once, and she was like, did you see that? Like, they think that I'm the person that they need to speak to. And it's like, they'll want to ignore me. Not want to, but it's a bias that we all have these bias, right? And it's a bias that I see. But if you're not black or brown, and Kevin probably maybe spoke a bit about it, I can't remember now, but you really feel that, because it feels like another rejection. And there's been thousands of incidences like that. It's like, actually, I'm the one you need to speak to, or I'm the one giving the presentation, or I'm the kind of, I don't know, I'm leading this group. Or you go up and you go up to a venue that you've hired, and it's like they go to turn to your friend rather than you, and I'm like, actually, it's me, it's leading it, or whatever. It's those little subtleties. And I'm not saying that everyone's racist, and they're not racist. It's just these little biases, and it's just runs through the thread of society. And how do we correct all of that? It's bloody impossible. I feel that very personally. But
do you think it's do you think that it's impossible because of how long, generations and generations of these bias? Like,
I think it'd be 10 generations. I don't think it. And that sounds really. I want to be optimistic, but I just. If I think, how long I've been on this planet and what I've seen and the changes I've seen, it's a bit like, my kids are adopted in an adoption system, and I look like, I look at that as well. It's just like, I became an adoption and fostering panel member when my kids were small, because they were adopted, and I did that for 11 years. So how much change did I see in those 11 years, Sam? We're talking about kids' lives. And don't get me wrong, there's good people trying to change things, just like you're trying to change and be more exclusive. Well, not change, but you are genuinely that just really nice guy, and you want to be inclusive, and there's great people like you. But whilst we live in a world where negativity gets more media coverage and social media coverage and newspaper coverage, then I'm not that hopeful about it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how do we get to a point where people can just accept people, that are human beings, that we're all human beings breathing the same air, and we're just trying to survive as best we can.
Because when you describe it like that, like this is what I guess angers me, frustrates me. Again, from a selfish point of view, I guess I look back. I'm putting this on gender, I guess, and looking at like my kids and knowing the problems that I'm inevitably going to face. When you describe it like that, we're just why is it? Because that is just such a simple solution. We're all human beings.
It's too simple.
It's so simple. Actually, why can't we all? If the world just saw it through those eyes, what a beautiful place it could be. And it doesn't seem, in my head, it doesn't seem that difficult of a shift for people to do it. Because like I said, Kevin highlighted something in me, like my own bias, like thinking I was this person. Actually, I looked at myself when he put that LinkedIn post after TEDx.
Yeah, that was amazing, that post.
Amazing. Like that started it, right? Started this thing, and I was like, I held my hand up. I'm one of them people that actually, I am a nice person. I come from a place of kindness. I do, but I have got biases from growing up in Dagenham in the 80s to
exactly.
I've got a generational thing. So, but if you're open-minded enough to be, there's got to be change. I've got to look at myself and can change. If I can do it, surely everyone can have that ability to go, I need to make a change here, and I need to look at, because ultimately, why is it that we just don't see exactly that? We're just a human being. Why does it have to be that colour, race, gender, age, whatever it is, these stigmas or these boxes that
we're always pitted against each other, aren't we?
Yeah.
Men and women, age, and the older you get, you feel you become less visible. I'm starting to feel that now, like a little bit like, getting older, like, why is younger better? Why, actually, our older generation, we're wiser. We've been, like, this is the happiest I've ever been. This is the best place I've ever been because I've got all of that experience. We're always pitted against each other. And again, that that's out in social media, it's out in news, negativity sells, doesn't it, at the end of the day. It takes a lot, like, I believe in, a bit like you probably, like radical responsibility, like taking responsibility where I could have done better, or even like my marriage broke down, and that was my partner's choice, but I still had to take responsibility in that relationship. Like, I didn't happen straight away, don't get me wrong, because I was in I was in a lot of pain, and my dad was dying at the same time, so it was a difficult time. But the minute, and my slogan I normally wear, sometimes wear a t-shirt that says it starts with you. That's what my business is called, and it all starts with you. Like, it starts in here, inside of you, your vision of the world and how you show up, the language you use, the behaviours you present. Having that awareness of how you show up, how your language affects somebody else, even your body language, that starts with you, inside of you, and that's that responsibility piece. And a lot of people don't want to do that. It's always someone else's fault, right? But what people are missing from the it starts with you thing, is that when you come from that place, you are so much more in control of your life. Like, once you're blaming the world for your problems and your woes, you've given them, you're handing over control to everybody else. Like, whatever it may be. Do you know what I mean? Like, blaming my ex-partner because they left or whatever. And the longer I stayed with that and stayed angry at them, or, it was your fault, you did this, you did that. I was basically giving my emotional well-being to them. And they weren't in my life anymore. They, that was just all handed over. So every day I wake up and I was like, it's them, I'm angry at you. And I've got no control over my own emotional well-being and how I'm showing up in the world, because I've handed it off to someone else. The minute I took it back for myself and I started to take some responsibility for how I showed up in that relationship and my actions, my language, my behaviour, then I started to take back some control. And then I could start to control my emotions or could regulate myself. I can come from a place of like starting to accept this is where we are. But when I'm pushing it out all the time, I'm not accepting. That's a place where unacceptance lives. And when you're not in a place of acceptance, life's incredibly difficult. You have to accept what is happening, and it starts with you.
Someone listening to this now maybe got some of those feelings, don't know. Like, where does someone start? Where does someone start on that journey to looking inside more? What's the starting point for that? What are the questions that you start to ask, or where do you start practically? What practical tool how do you start looking inside?
Another big question. Where do you start? I think you've got to be willing. You've got to be willing. Like, you know, I'm a life coach and I work with amazing people, and if they're not willing, then you know, sometimes I work with organisations and people do come and they're like, right, you need to go and see Sam, go and have some coach. I can think of a classic one, a football club, a top football club sent one of their members of staff. They said, you need to go and work with Sam, and they didn't want to come. Like, clearly didn't want to come, which is difficult when you're trying to coach someone who doesn't want to be in the chair, doesn't want to be willing to look in the mirror, because for them, when the time that they came, it was all the club's fault, the club environment, and other things that were happening in that club, and they weren't willing to take any responsibility to look in the mirror. So I would say they have to be willing, and they have to be willing if they're going to come to work with me. But actually, that person, after a few weeks, we started to shift, and they started to shift, and it became easier and easier for me to just hold up the mirror and go, okay. And that had a really great outcome. They actually left the club, but that was the best outcome for them and for the club. That wasn't what the club were trying to do, and actually they were trying to cling on to a role that they didn't really want to be in. But they had to be willing to look within, and in the beginning they didn't want to, but once we just, whatever we did, I won't divulge that, but eventually they were able to and willing to look within. And so you've got to be willing, to look at yourself, because and that starts with, how am I showing up in the world? But, what environments am I in? What people am I associated with? What habits and routines do I have? What's draining me of energy? What's giving me energy? Looking at these areas and starting to look about how you are showing up in this world. And then, the people you're in, the environments and does that feel like you? Why are you there? Why are you hanging out with these people? Like, are your values aligned? Does the connection feel true? You singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak, or do they challenge you in a good way? Because sometimes that is also what we need. The environments you're going to hang out. Are you in the pub every Friday night getting bladdered, or are you in the gym every Saturday morning? And either could be great or not great, because you might be just going to the gym because your mates go and you don't really want to go, or you might be in the pub because that's where you think your people are, or you actually might really like a drink. I don't know, but just examining, it's like a treasure hunt of yourself, of like, what am I doing? Where am I showing up? Who are the people I'm hanging out with? A lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people come to me and like, I can't get a relationship, or, my friends just don't feel, right, or I mean, nothing feels right anymore, I'm not hanging out. And I was like, that's on you. That's not on them. That's on you. Like, look at where you have to look within. And generally, the reason we end up hanging out with the wrong people is because a bit of disconnection from ourselves. We feel lonely, and we all want to be part of something. That's just human nature, right? We're pack animals. We want to be part of something. Sometimes, unfortunately, we hang out with the wrong people, and we just end up going down a path that's not for us. Just like we can get in a relationship, and that can be the same, right? We just stick at it because we're part of something, and we all want to be part of something. It doesn't always mean it's the right thing to be part of. So it's self-awareness. You'll probably hear a lot of life coaches and a lot of smart people will come on and say self-awareness is a place to start. You have to become self-aware. there's a scale of self-awareness as well, but you have to have some awareness of how you're showing up in your life, and then the awareness of, well, who am I? Like, who am I really? Do I enjoy these environments? Do I enjoy these people? Do I enjoy, these habits? Are they working for me? Are they working against me? And why am I doing them? It starts with you. It starts with a self-awareness and looking at yourself and the willingness to do that, because you're going to find some things you don't really like that don't feel that you probably know that you need to change.
Do you think a couple of things there with relationships, especially long-term relationships, sometimes that it's one of the reasons they break down, because when you both potentially start looking inward, that the person you become and the person they become don't then align.
Yeah.
Can that be fixed, or is that you can get to a point where you go, actually, this has just been a chapter of my life, and I need to, from a positive way, like look good, bad, over however long you've been together, but you look at that and you go, actually, we're just in different places now, and that's okay. The people you worked with, have you been in a situation with that, and that sometimes it's actually the right decision to let go?
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things for human beings is to let go, by the way. That's probably another conversation we need to have, because I talk about that a lot with breathwork and the work that I do. Do you know, when I became a life coach, it was a bit of a journey for me to becoming a life coach, and I didn't actually know that I'd be a relationship coach. I don't know why, because life is life, right? And one of the biggest parts of life is relationships. But one thing that I find with whoever I work with, they never come to me and say, oh, I'm struggling with my relationship, or I'm whatever. I remember one of the first professional footballers I worked with, we had 2 sessions, third session, the relationship came up. And I think this is probably when the penny dropped for me, that actually I need to learn quickly about relationships. And as someone who's been married twice, and but relationships are everywhere, right? With my kids, with whatever. But every 2 common things that come up in life coaching for me and with my clients, that this is just, I've noticed this pattern, that they never generally come to my door with, is relationships and money. They always come up. So I've pretty much every one of my clients, we end up sorting relationships, or looking at the dynamics within relationship, whether it's a relationship with your boss, your partner, your kids, your mother-in-law, your friends, whatever it is. Relationships are everywhere. But of course, the one we really all care about probably is the one we have with a partner. But actually, that's completely wrong. It needs to be the one that you have with yourself. Because most people, right, we don't do it. Because it's easier to blame everyone else. And it's really bloody hard to look at yourself and think, well, where have I gone wrong? What have I messed up? But that's you spend 100% of your time yourself. Nobody else. You're your longest commitment and your greatest asset. Yet most people don't recognise that, and aren't willing to invest in themselves, energy, time, money. Like, I'm all for that. Like, the first part of my day is all about me, and I do it unapologetically. I'm my greatest asset. I'm 100% with my own head all the time, right? So that's my one main relationship. But relationships of the heart, in terms of intimate relationships, people drift apart, right? When you get married, or you move in with someone, or you have a long-term relationship. It's a contract at the end of the day. What happens with contracts? They get broken. You know that, right? A job contract, it's like, I've got all of these conditions. In the beginning, you'll sign that contract, right? If it's a job, 30 grand a year, 50 grand a year, 100 grand, I'm signing that contract with all of these conditions. It's the same when generally when you get married or in a long-term relationship, you've got, I commit to this. And in the beginning, you'll willingly sign that. But what happens? With the job, it becomes less attractive. I didn't sign up for that. Well, you actually did. Same in the relationships. Think, your job changes. The world is constantly shifting and changing. Everything is temporary. Everything. I say that to people, and I've learned this being married twice, right? Is like, You think when you get married and you sign that contract, this is the status quo. This is what I'm signing up for, because that's all you know, right? You can't predict the future and what might happen to your partner. They might get sick, they might have mental health challenges. They might go off down a more spiritual route than you. And I know a couple that have done that. You know what I mean? It's like, but in that moment, you're just signing up to what is and what's probably gone before. But you don't know what's going to go ahead. And so when that happens, I've got it with a client who, I see it all the time, to be honest with you, because they come to me, they're going to grow at the end of the day. They're going to change, they're going to grow. And if they've got a partner, is that partner willing? Because they might start off, like, one might be here, like the person I'm with might be here because they're like, well, I'm willing to look at myself and do the growth work, and I want to drive on and move forward. Their partner might be here and like, well, yeah, go do it if you want to do it. Then what happens is this happens, and the divide gets bigger. But sometimes they start then having conversations with their partner, and the partner's like, oh, okay, yeah, like, oh, you're making sense here, and they'll grow together. But quite often it doesn't, and the gap just gets bigger and bigger. I've got a beautiful client right now who's been on that journey with me for a year, and they've been able to bring their partner along with them, which is fantastic. They're growing together. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and it happens in life, right? We change. Like I don't know how long you've been in your relationship, Sam, but you're not the Sam you were. I don't know how long you've been together. A long time.
You wouldn't want to be, right? Like I guess we don't want to. Like exactly. Like I guess I do use the podcast as therapy almost, and quite cathartic for me. But in that sense, we're 28 years we've been together. You know what I mean? Known each other since we was at school. I've known her since we was 11. Wow. 18, we started dating. Been married, 2 kids. Like, wow. You know what I mean? Like, but we've been having some real challenges and we have done over the years. There's been ups and downs.
It's life,
we always
right?
get through it, and we're just at that point now, knowing, actually, is this the end of it?
Yeah,
and it's a really tough place to be, and you don't want to let go of. I'm trying to reframe a lot of it in my head at the moment. Going, is it that it's just actually what's best for both of us is that we look at 28 years as an amazing chapter of our life, and actually, because I am a really different person to I was 20, and thankfully, and she is as well.
Absolutely.
And I think and a lot of the stuff she says about not doing enough work on myself, and I'm trying to, I guess I do in this sense, and I feel like I am, but there's, without going into much, but yeah, there's elements of it that I don't do enough work on myself, and there's an issue with that, and she feels that she does. So again, there's this disparity,
right?
Yeah. And I feel like I'm the closest to my most authentic self that I've ever been.
Right.
And that's questioned,
and that's it. Like, who did she fall in love with?
Yeah,
was it you, or was it an authentic you?
Yeah, maybe.
Do you see what I mean? It's like friendships are built on inauthenticity. I've let friends go, and you walk away because you realise actually I was built on a very false version of me, a mask. Like friendships I have now, like for me and my partner, like this is the most authentic relationship I've ever had in my life. It's taken a freaking long time to get here, but my friendships are the same because I'm unmasked. I'm like, like I said to you, there's nothing. I'll talk about anything. I really don't care and I'm really loving my skin. I'm loving my hair. I'm like, if I want to wear that, I'm wearing that. It's taken a long time to get for that. But who did your wife fall in love with? And who did you fall in love with? And I think there is a way to separate with love. Yeah. My first marriage, we separated with love. My kids were challenging children. They were 10, 11 at a time, similar age to yours. We'd been together. Oh, God. I don't know how long we were, but the kids were like 10, I think. But we separated with love because we knew. And my partner then, she said to me, this is just the ending of one chapter. And it was my, I say it was my choice to end it. I'm pretty sure she was feeling some things that I was feeling. And I was feeling a lot of guilt because of the kids. And that's what she said to me. It's just the ending of one chapter. And we've remained really good friends. Obviously, our kids were challenging and difficult, so we had to parent the kids together. But we've remained friends throughout. And there is a way to separate with loving kindness. That isn't just some woo-woo thing to say. There is a way to do it. But it takes a willingness.
on both parts. I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, it's no good if you, like, with my second marriage, I was willing to do that again. My partner was having none of it. She just was angry and wanted money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, not just like that, but you know what I mean. It was very. That's how I saw it anyway. But I was willing to take responsibility and go, do you know what? Yeah, I fucked up. Like, I wasn't here enough. I was more interested in my work. Like, it took me a while to accept that, and I did. But you know, there has to be this willingness to do that. The thing is, when marriage was created, right? You probably know this, right? When that contract system was created, people weren't expected to live to be 85 or whatever, you know. My mum and dad were together 60 years, and they had a bloody lovely relationship, a really good relationship. But that's you know, I'm a bit of like, we're not in those times anymore. Marriage was as a time when a woman needed a man. Well, we don't need men anymore. We can do quite well on our own. Do you know what I mean? It was like we needed them for for money, for shelter, for everything. And people weren't expected to live till 80, 90 or whatever, you know. Yeah. So marriages were like, I don't know, 20, 30 years or something like that. You know, and you have to find a way to grow together. And you're only going to do that with openness and willingness. And unfortunately, sadly, a lot of us, probably more men than women, aren't willing to do that because we've not been shown how to be open and show our emotion. I didn't know how to laugh. I didn't know how to cry. I was brought up in an environment, very emotional, sort of kind of shut down environment where we didn't laugh. We didn't cry. We laughed a lot. We didn't cry. We weren't encouraged to cry. We weren't encouraged to talk about our emotions. So if you get brought up like that, and sadly a lot of boys do still get brought up like that, man up, all of that rubbish, you know, this toughness that's supposed to come from not speaking and being a fighter and all, you know, how are you going to do that in your relationship if you've not been shown that as a child? You've not been shown how to be emotionally intelligent or agile, and that actually vulnerability is a strength and not a weakness. Vulnerability keeps you strong.
I love that. It's so important. That message. And I spoke about this at one of our top table events. I've got to get you to one. You'd love it.
Yeah, no, I do want to come.
We talked about exactly this vulnerability as a sign of strength, and I said, and someone there who's a really good friend of mine, he was sitting and he said, I'm going to push back on you a bit there. I can't afford to be vulnerable.
Right.
He said, so many people rely on me. Like, I run a business that the business relies on me. They think, so I can't break. I won't break. And that's it. And I'm like, okay. What happens if you do? Because we all. I felt like that. I was like, I can't break. I've got it always. I'm here. I'm Sam. Yeah. No problem. Mask. I've got it all the time. And when I did break, I was gone. I was not. You know what I mean? So you know, that's fine to say, but that narrative for me is what's. And I said, but if you do, who do you go to? Where do you show that vulnerability? So I can't be like that. You're not allowing yourself because are you then not living an authentic life? I don't know. I'm not questioning it. He's a happy guy and he's got a great life and stuff. But I just like I feel that is could be quite a damaging narrative. Quite a damaging narrative if that's you, because that is that old style. Like we do sometimes. We just need to get up and get on with it.
Yeah, of course. There are occasions, but not continually, constantly. I mean, when I back in when was it, sort of 2020, I was really struggling. So like my marriage broke down, my dog died, and my dad died, all in a short space of time, few months, not a long period of time, and I really struggled. Like there was evidence that I was struggling, I wasn't eating and stuff like that, but I also had a lot of shame that I was struggling again at that point in my life. I was like, Christ, you know, I'm a life coach, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm struggling. So I didn't share that with anyone because of shame. And what happens is when we don't have resilience, which is ultimately about flexibility, it's about agility, and we're just rigid. Anything that's rigid, if you think about a rigid tree that can't be flexible in the wind and the storms or whatever, what happens? It snaps. And there's probably no coming back from that. Sometimes there isn't. You know, I've seen people with burnout and they snap and they break. And that comes from just keeping going. Because eventually you'd got no flexibility. You're not bending with the wind and adjusting the sails to the wind and at sea, and you eventually snap and you break, and you can break big time. Burnout is a serious thing.
Did you break at that? Was that your
lowest
point? Or?
Yeah, that was. Oh, I had a lot of shame, like I said, that I was like in this really dark hole and I couldn't get myself out of it. And I was, after everything I've done, like I didn't want to feel that pain. It was just, the 3 levels of pain from, and it was all, not all, but it felt quite rejecting at the time. I felt a lot of rejection around my marriage. Losing a parent's incredibly hard. I didn't think, it just came at a really, too much in one go, really. And I just wasn't dealing with it very well, wasn't sleeping, wasn't really eating very well. And it was a really tough time. And I was on a one-way ticket, really. I planned it. I planned to take my own life in the March of that year, I think. I did go and see my doctor. I didn't want to take the tablets. I refused. I don't know. Stupid, really. It's pride, I suppose. And I had that narrative in my head of like, you should be doing better. You should be managing. You should be coping. And that just did not serve me well. That just sent me down this huge, dark hole. But the one good thing that I did do for myself was that I did go to my doctor. And whilst I didn't take the medication, they text you now, don't they? And they text me all the numbers. If you're in crisis, you phone this number, blah, blah, blah. Which, when I got to crisis, I did utilise, and it, saved me in that moment. I'm pretty sure it did. But that was all about not being flexible, having that crazy narrative in my head around shame that I couldn't really I was just giving myself a really hard time about that I wasn't coping better. And my father really hadn't passed away at this point, but I knew he was going to pass away. He had cancer and it had moved to his bones. He'd broken his hip. We were, heading to my dad passing away. So, it was just, I wasn't giving myself any flexibility. I wasn't giving myself any slack. And I think you do eventually break in those situations. The minute you open up and you say, hey, I'm struggling here. Like, I'm human. Like, we're all human. Like we say that before, right? We're all messy freaking humans. One thing being on the adoption fostering panels taught me more than probably life coaching. Like, life coaching all these years and meeting some amazing people. But one thing that taught me most about human beings was being on adoption and fostering panels for 11 years. Because not only did I read hundreds of cases around, unfortunately, children that have been neglected and abused and come from traumatic environments, so I learned about them and their families and how these circles and networks are very difficult to break. But also the people on the other side of the table that wanted to adopt children and foster children. And we had politicians, we had actors, you would not believe, famous people sitting in that chair. Ordinary people like me, life coaches, secretaries, nurses, every, photographers, everything, every kind of background, religions, ethnicities sat in that chair. And one thing I learned, or a couple of things that I learned from that, was that everybody's got bloody baggage. Everybody is a messy human. And unfortunately people would come to panel thinking they have to be perfect. We don't want perfect humans raising imperfect children. You're imperfect, I'm imperfect, I'm messy, you're messy. Sometimes I fuck up, sometimes you do. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's okay to be messy because we're all messy. It's okay to need help. We all need help. Yeah, but sometimes, that narrative, especially for men, is, can't, I should be able to manage. I should be able to cope.
Because that should like society, it's not only what we put on us, but a lot of the message from society is, isn't it, because of the narrative of where you should be at a certain points in life, right? We should be, you go to let's go on a basic thing. Go to school, then you come out university, and then university get a job and find a partner. You settle down and married and kids and live happily ever after. And this is the narrative out there that this is where we should be. Cause similar things to me like that. The point I share as well, I should have had this and like that. What? It's so much of our own narrative and the story we tell ourselves, but and this is why so much of what I'm trying to change, because it's a lot of it's from society. The outside, we look outside, and they're the messages that we seem to be getting. And then the comparison side of it, you look at everyone else, you go, they've all got it all figured out. Which, like you said, none of us have got it figured out. We're all imperfect. We're all a little bit messy, and I guess I'm just keen to go back to that time and just what got you through that. What, I guess that point of feeling so lost where you were, what changed for you? What got you out of that point?
Yeah. When I look back on it, I think, God, Jesus, I had so much stress at that time. I didn't, when you're in something, you're just in it, aren't you? You don't really think, I'm under a lot of stress. No, I didn't. I had a lot of stress. I think what got me through it. Well, in the moment of crisis, I and it was a very blurred moment. I was not, wasn't clear thinking. Everything was just almost like my vision had gone, like my reality had gone. I was in a very weird mental space. So in that moment, I managed to pick up the phone and call the number. In that one moment, that definitely helped me. And there was another moment where I wrote 6 letters to my family, and I got invited to an awards event. And somebody I didn't know very well, and she's like, "Come to my awards event, sit on the top table with us." And there was a few celebs on there. Don't know why she invited me. I do now, but I didn't at the time. And I met an amazing bunch of people that night. But my plan was that was where I was going to do it. Like, nobody knew me there. I was in a hotel. I was away from home.
She actually planned it.
Yeah, perfect opportunity. But I was so not in my head that I'd forgotten that it was my mum's birthday around that time. So then when I remember getting to the hotel and the letters were in my bag, and I was like, shit, it's my mum's birthday tomorrow. And I remember that really clearly. So that made me stop, because I wasn't even going to go to the event. I was just like, I'm just staying in the room. Anyway, I ended up going to the event because I just remembered it. Like, last minute, I'd remembered it was my mum's birthday. And I kind of got scooped up. I don't know. I didn't really know these people very well. And a few people came up, "Oh, you're Sam Adams. Yeah, I see your stuff online. And, so good to have you here." And people I just didn't really know these people. And I just got scooped up, and then they had an after party. It's like, "Sam, come, we want you to come," like that. Anyway, so I went, I had a good time. I went to bed that night. And that was a very weird thing to happen, because I was just like, this makes sense. Anyway, a few years later, I did message the person that invited me, and I said, what made you invite me? I said, because I don't know if you know what impact you had on me. And she said, I just had a sense that I needed to invite you. This woman writes poetry, writes books, and is a celebrant for, she does funerals and deaths. I don't know whether it's because she's around death a lot or whatever, but she said, I just had a sixth sense that I needed to invite you. That was really spooky. Wow. So those were a couple of things that happened. But then moving on from that, I realised I needed something more. I'd had a bit of talking therapy. Obviously, I'm a life coach, and my own coaching myself wasn't bloody working. And I had good people around me, healers, and but it just wasn't enough. And I've heard a psychologist speak about this, about the human's ability to cope. Like, you can cope with one big loss. You're probably getting a bit wobbly with 2, but 3, most people just, legs are gone. And that was me, 3 really big losses. And let alone, I was spending a lot of time in Spain there. I had a house in Spain. I was back in England, so my home had gone. My marriage had gone, my dog had gone, and then, my dad, it was just, the legs had come off, basically. so I was like I was searching for something that was going to help me, because I remember I was trying to avoid the pain. I was like, and I think that's the thing with, for me personally, when I was thinking about taking my own life, it wasn't that I didn't really want to live. Like, I love life. I love people. I love having an impact. It was, I didn't want the pain. I couldn't manage the pain. Oh, that's how I felt at the time. Just the level of pain was unbearable. Every morning I'd wake up and, wake up with that doom of like, oh, fuck, yeah, like, this is my life. Like, I'm goosebumps now. Like, that dread of another day. And then I'd go to bed at night and I'd be like, fucking hell, I got through another day. Well done. It was just, I just didn't want the pain. So I was trying to avoid the pain. But you have to feel the feels. Like, you have to feel the feels, and that's really tricky. And so I kept seeing this thing about breathwork coming up, I don't know, on Instagram or whatever it's like. And I looked into it a bit and I thought it's a bunch of old woo-woo nonsense. I was like, what is it? I was so skeptical. I was just like, but it just kept coming up, and then I started to look into it a bit more, and someone said, hey, you should go to breath. I was like, this is, rubbish. Anyway, eventually I've come across this, and I looked at a lot of breathwork. There's a lot of woo-woo stuff, a lot of spiritual stuff, and I wouldn't say that's really me. I'm pretty down-to-earth kind of person. And I came across this guy from LA who swore quite a lot, and just said it as it was, kind of like my kind of guy. He used to be, I think he was an addict. He was a drug addict, and he found breathwork, and he'd been doing it for decades. Well, not decades. He'd been doing it a long time. And so I went, and he was doing this 5-day emotional detox course. And I thought, after doing a lot of research and a lot of I was kind of like at the point that I had to do something radical. Otherwise, I probably wasn't going to, continue on this journey. So I went and did this 5-day emotional detox. And I had to do it online because of lockdown and everything, all of those things that then came. And I did a thing called conscious connected breathwork, which is the modality he talks. Breathwork's like an umbrella term. There's loads of ways to do it, loads of different changes, and I've learned a lot more in the last 5 years. But I dived in at the deep end. That is the deep end. There's this spectrum of breathwork, and there's breathwork that's called transformational breathwork, and there's a few types. One's called rebirthing, holotropic, and then conscious connected, a few other things. I did conscious connected, and then so I was in at the deep end. I didn't know that. I just thought, I'll go and do this thing. Bloody hell! It day one, I was like, what the hell is this? It's like I was tripping. Like, it was like, really? But in a good way. And after these 5 days, so there's more to it than that. I did the breath work. There was some letters I wrote. A lot of unearthing, a lot of ability. I found a way to let go of the emotion and feel this, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, and I need to feel my way through it. Not so consciously like that, but I cried so much in those 5 days. Luckily, I was living on my own. No one was bothering me. And I wrote, I wrote these letters, and then I started to write poetry, and it just cracked me open. Like, the most profound thing I'd ever done and I've been in personal development a long time, 25, 30 years. It was the most profound thing I'd ever done that had such an instant impact. And it cracked me open, but it allowed me to get more to the root, I guess, of what was being held in my body. And a lot of what was being held in my body wasn't just about what was happening right there in that moment. It was the stuff that had been stuck in my body from my childhood, even though I'd done talking therapy many times. And it all came tumbling out. And that's where the poetry came. I'm not a writer, Sam. I barely came out of school with a CSE, as they were back then, and in English especially. But so I'm definitely not a writer. I'm a talker, and I started writing poetry. And I wrote hundreds of poems, but it was so cathartic. Like, it just cracked me open to this poetry, and I found this love of poetry. And I wrote a lot, and if you read them, some of them are a bit dark. I don't really share them much, but when I go back and read them, it was just me. It helped me find a way to be creative and to open up what had been locked inside. And every time I breathed or did the breath work, I wrote. And I'd been journaling for bloody long time before that. Honestly, if you want to journal powerfully, combine it with breath work. It absolutely game changed everything for me. And that is probably, those three things were the things that got me through. And I still, obviously, then the breathwork was so profound and so impactful. I was like, shit, I can use this with my clients. Like, you know, some of my clients come to me with all sorts of stuff, and there's always a personal element, even if we're trying to do a business thing. And so I paid thousands of pounds and went and did the training, got the certification, and then this journey of passion around breath then just has happened over the last few years. And I realised that I was at the more extreme end, and I wanted to understand more about the breath, of the foundational side, the functional side, how we breathe day to day, how that impacts us, some of the medium level tools that we can use to help us regulate ourselves emotionally day to day. And so I've just been on this whole journey, and I now my work now is called Life and Breath, and that's life coaching and breath work combined together. And I really work with people that professionals, leaders, athletes who are at some kind of transition in their life, transitioning from a relationship to a relationship, career, growing a business. As you know, they might be grieving, loss of identity, loss of finance, whatever. It's usually around some kind of loss and change and transformation, and I just bring the two things together, and it's just a game changer. Just a game changer.
I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant, it's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I mean, there's quite a few. There's a couple of bits. I guess just before on the breathwork stuff, just like you mentioned about obviously some of them letters and stuff like that that you wrote. What sort of things was it? Just sharing your emotions from some dark times or trauma from a young. From your childhood, or what were the letters, and how I guess was that the way of releasing all of that in a way to put it onto paper?
I think. Do you know, sometimes I don't know where it came from, and I've read some of the poems to my partner, and she'd be like, like, where'd that? And she's like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, I don't know how I'm doing it. I honestly didn't know how I was doing it. Like, some of the letters I wrote during the actual breathwork 5-day thing, like, that was that was more conscious and about really just writing down like how I really truly felt, like the anger, the pain, the rejection, the feelings of not feeling good enough and being let down, and all of that. Plus, I remember writing one for my dad, because like I always craved his love and attention. But the poetry really, that was inside of my body somewhere, and I sometimes I'd read it back. I remember reading one back, and I'm thinking, did I write that? Like, it's so good. And I remember giving it to my partner. I'm like, but you are good. But the thing is, I can't write like that now. I can't write like that.
Because you feel that everything that was in that you needed to get out is out.
Yeah, and the breath work, just every time, I always like, when I do breath work, it's like I talk to people about setting some intentions, and I really encourage people to write afterwards. Because not write, but to just have a notebook and do whatever you want to do on that notebook. And people come to my workshops, and we do the conscious connected breath work, and then they have time and space to for integration and to use their journals if they want to. Some people will write poems. Some people might write bullet points. The other week, woman drew a third eye thing. She's like, I don't know what the that was, but this is what I saw, and I thought I'd draw it. So she just drew on the pad. And so, yeah, doing this, I think not for everyone. Everyone's different, right? Not everyone likes breathwork. It's fine. It's okay. But it is a really great, powerful tool to help you really open up your creativity and see beyond the conscious mind. Because you know what it's like. We get in our heads and a lot of it's bullshit. Yeah. A lot of it's autopilot. A lot of it's same thinking all the time. This allows the subconscious to rise up, and you find all that creativity, all of that stuff that you've been hiding. The truth, I always say the thing with breathwork that did this for me, and I've seen it do a million times, not a million, but you know what I mean, hundreds and hundreds of times it is, the breathwork cannot lie. It gets to the truth of you. And that's what it did to me. It got me back to myself, like the truth of me, who I really was, how I was showing up, what was really paining me, allowing me to find a way to the breath work and the writing really helped me access that and move through that. It didn't happen overnight. It was a process, but it was a tool and a way that helped me move forward through that. And I've seen it, seen it so many times where people would come, and I just always encourage them, have a notebook, have a pen. You might not want to write anything, you might just want to go away and cry or laugh or whatever, but sometimes you'd be surprised what comes out.
So what I find fascinating, like you said that you was sceptical. So someone may be listening who does say, yeah, it's just breathing, right? Like, what are you talking about? It's just like, and there are, I'm sure, a lot of skeptics out there that would potentially.
Yeah, I was one.
So what? I guess practically, how does it? How does taking someone on that journey through breathwork enable you to really go inside and unlock that? How does it get you there?
How does it get? It's a good question. I mean, like I say, breathwork's. There's a spectrum of breathwork, and it depends on where someone's journey is. One of my newest clients, she's come to my breathwork classes, and my breathwork classes are conscious connected breathwork, so it's the extreme end. I say extreme, it sounds.
Can you start so someone that's never done breathwork before, they could come to that? And like you did, I guess.
I didn't know any different. I was just straight at the deep end. I think it's probably better that you've done some kind of breathwork, but I get so many people going like, oh yeah, I've done breathwork, and then they do what I show them, and they're like, no, I haven't done breathwork. I've never done anything like that before. Luckily, I had no reference when I went and did it. It was just like, oh my God, is this what breathwork is? And then I found out it wasn't. But yes, you can. Many people come and they've never done any kind of breathwork. A lot of people come who, like I say, are at transitions. They're a bit lost, they're a bit stuck, don't know which direction to go in. We were talking about you and your relationship. A lot of people like that come. A lot of people that have, had a loss like me, all of those losses, it's like they'll come to breathwork, they want something radical, they're at a point where it's just like I need to do something different.
And does it help you gain that clarity? Like, for example, I'm not saying that you're going to come with a problem and find me the solution. But I guess if you are stuck in I don't know whether to let go of this, I don't know whether to do this, whatever that looks like, does that process enable you to just gain that clarity?
I think when you breathe conscious connectedly, you can have altered states of consciousness. So it can be like taking psychedelics without all of that crap that comes afterwards. And you're just breathing in a very different way, taking in more air, you're changing your carbon dioxide levels. So it alters your state of consciousness. So you kind of the conscious brain, the thinking brain, shuts down a little bit. And the subconscious is allowed to come up. And of course, the subconscious brain runs the show. Whether we like it or not. We think the conscious mind does it doesn't. The subconscious is literally running every part of your body. When you sleep, what do you think happening? It's not your conscious mind that's running the show, your subconscious is. And what's in the subconscious mind is also, it's like a filing cabinet of your whole life. All the stuff you've forgotten, all the memories, all the pain, all the stuff you've probably shoved at the back of the filing cabinet, so to speak, and don't want to think about, is all in the subconscious. So when you allow it and you shift your states of consciousness, all of this stuff comes up. Not all of it, And it doesn't happen every time. Some of this stuff might come through. But what happens is because you're shutting down that conscious brain, like, it just gives you this clarity. Like, this just clarity of that you can't, well, I've not been able to find in any other way. Like, for me, I always get this clarity. It's like an internal shower. That's the one way to describe it. It's like this decluttering without having to think about decluttering, or like, I want to clear out all of this stuff that's inside of me, or I want to make a clear path and have a clear thinking. Like, you try and do that for yourself and think your way out, but you're not going to you can't think your way out of a lot of shit, but you can breathe your way through it. I'm not saying you're going to get the answers and the solutions and you're going to know your full absolute truth at the end of it. You know, it's not a magic pill, but it can give you this amazing feeling of openness. For me, one of the biggest beautiful feelings I usually always get, not always, it's different every time, is abundance. Like, just feeling of, actually, it doesn't matter what happens to me, I'll be okay. And for someone who's felt not okay and not enough their whole life, that is pretty fucking powerful. Like, for me to feel like that, and I see it time and time again. I was talking, having conversations with a researcher here in Brighton. His name's Dr. Guy Fincham, and he's doing research around conscious connected breathwork at the uni. So I'm going up there in a couple of weeks. Can't wait. We had a really fascinating conversation about what is actually happening when we do this breathwork, and there is a lot of science and neuroscience around it, but most people who come to class don't care about that. They just want to know, can I feel differently? Am I going to be able to move through what I'm feeling? Am I going to be able to reduce my panic attacks, my stress? You know, they want to feel something different. And there's no guarantees, but it just has this ability to shift your state of consciousness, to get you out of the thinking brain, and just to give you this clarity of thought. And for me, that clarity was obviously the ability to really lean into the pain, and like through writing. And for other people, it comes in different ways. You know, I could probably give you 100 stories. I remember some have more effect on you than others. And I remember a woman coming, and I always check in with everybody afterwards, get feedback or whatever. And I've got like hundreds, and I'm not joking. Like, I've not got hundreds of messages from people about breathwork, and this is when you know you're having a real impact, and it's not about the money, Sam. Right? It's not. And this woman's like, I've been estranged from my mum, and I just can't bring myself to talk to her. But for some reason, she said, after breathwork, went and got a coffee, and I wrote and I journaled about my mum. And she said, and I decided to pick up the phone, and goosebumps coming in, call my mum. And her mum and her had a conversation for the first time in years, like a good conversation. That's reconnecting you to relationships, to people, to bonds and ties that maybe have been severed over something so trivial. And just that, like, things like that happen. And I just think it made her realise that she needed to be the one to pick up the phone. If that's the only thing it did for her. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it just really opens you up. And then you have the other thing, like somebody I know quite well now. She's a business owner. And someone I thought is just never going to be into breathwork. She's like, oh, I want to come. And I'm like, okay. She came. And no one has to say why they come. Like, you know, but when we do workshops, we talk a lot more before and at the end. But generally, if you just come to the class, just lie down and breathe. I'll guide you through. And then she messaged me afterwards. She said, oh, my God, like, I'm so tired, for one, because it's hard work. But there was she had a big business at the time. She doesn't have that business now, and I think that was part of the journey. There's 3 questions I have been wrangling in my head for the last 2 weeks about this bloody business. She said, I've got all 3 answers. And you're like, like I say, I can't guarantee what you're going to get, but those are, you know, and there's just hundreds of stories. An artist came, had a block. She used to paint massive big pictures, or she still does, and not being able to paint a thing. I don't know what's going on, you know, in her world, maybe a lot of stress, relationship stuff, whatever. 2 weeks later, she sent me this beautiful picture. She said, when I was in the breathwork, I had this beautiful vision of what I needed to paint, and this is it, I've painted it. And she's like, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's just this thing that, this tool, this modality that just gives you this ability to open you up, to be more receptive, to clear out. Like I say, it's like an internal shower, because you're not going to do that shit with your... Like, I was trying to think my way out of all of my depression and my pain, and my thoughts were, I can't, no, don't want to feel it, don't want to think about it, no. That was what my thinking, like, you shouldn't be feeling like this, so let's not go there. But the breathwork was like, we're going there, because that's the truth of you. And the breath knows where to go. I absolutely believe that. People come in pain, and, you know, I got... A woman came the other day and she was leaving. I said, everything okay? If you're feeling lightheaded, just take... She said, no, I'm fine. I've got a bit of pain in my tummy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Have you got any... You know, have you had any problems there? And her eyes just went, yeah, like, I've got these gynecological stuff going on. I'm like, yeah, breath knows where to go.
And I guess from a trauma point of view, I look at... I had... Susanna Peche come on, and she's a trauma-informed doctor, and she speaks a lot about that. But again, the book that you alluded to earlier, but the body knows the score and that type of thing. So, is it from the trauma that we maybe suppress, that is in our subconscious, that we're just suppressing down, that the breath work just enables that to release? Is that?
It's you're changing your brain. You're basically hyperventilating. So when you breathe conscious connectedly, so you're kind of like taking yourself to a bit of an edge, and you're dropping into your subconscious, because you're sort of you know, like, when it's a bit like dreamlike state, isn't it? Like, you're not really, like, you know, sometimes you're like, you're kind of aware but not aware. Do you know what I mean? That dreamlike state. So and you're controlling this. You have autonomy over this, but you're creating this state within your body. You're changing the air and the carbon dioxide in your body to create this mental shift. So when that happens, it's a science that even, you know, I don't know to those levels. You need to get Dr. Fincham in it. Although, actually, to be fair to him, he's more interested in the impacts rather than the science behind it. But you are basically bringing yourself to a bit of an edge, but in a controlled way. And, of course, then the brain does shift. And you do shift out of conscious into subconscious. And the subconscious has everything. It has all those memories you've long forgotten about. You couldn't even... You're like, oh, shit, yeah, that happened. Or, you know, people see psychedelics. People describe it as orgasmic, cosmic, blissful, everything. Like, it's just taking you to the depth of where, yeah, all of that stuff. You know, you have to be careful with breath work. You know...
So I guess it can be, like you said, if you're not expecting to unlock some stuff that maybe you have put away or whatever, and it comes out, then I guess. But
I always say that to people. Look, you know, there's 3 main areas it impacts: physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I can't guarantee to what degrees that it may impact. It may or may not. You could just lie there and have a nice meditative time. But you equally might, you know, go someplace that is something you might have forgotten about. It might unearth something like that, or, you know, some trauma that, you know, that's been pushed away and you haven't wanted to think about. So I think I don't encourage anyone to do conscious connected breathwork on their own. You need to be guided. You need to be supported. You need to be in an environment that's going to be supportive. You know, some people you have to, because it's not for everyone. Do you know what I mean? It probably is too real and too raw for some people to go there, and it may even make things worse. But in my experience, and for the hundreds of people I've done it with, nothing bad's ever happened. No one's ever, you know, said, shit, like, this has just made things worse. You know, for anyone that's come with chronic anxiety, it's helped them manage their anxiety, because you have autonomy, you have control. You're a grown adult coming into this room, and you're in control of your breath anyway. Regardless of how I'm guiding you through, you can stop at any point. You can slow down your breathing at any point. You have complete autonomy. But there is no question that sometimes, it can get to some things that are a bit uncomfortable, but they probably need to be got to. But I try and create an environment that is supportive. They can always talk to me afterwards. I always check in with everybody afterwards, because I think it can go deep sometimes, and people might need some extra support, not necessarily with me, but, you know, someone else, and I want to be able to signpost them and just make sure that I don't leave people floundering. You know, I wasn't left floundering. You know, I luckily I got quite an empathic coach around that time as well, and he really helped. But yeah, it can bring up some stuff that. But you know, sometimes trauma gets brought up that you've forgotten about.
Yeah.
And I've had that, like, you know, I've had several times, and someone said, like, I forgot that even happened to me. Like, and this happened to me when I was a kid, and do you know what? I blocked that out. But it helped, you know. You know, I'm thinking of one particular person. It's just like, but actually, it was the time. It's time. And they're like 42, and it's like.
Yeah, well. And I think, like, for me, like, listening to it, like, again, there's so much of my learning from all these conversations I've had. It goes back to, and stuff we were saying about even trying to teach kids this. So much of it is processing, and if we can process and understand our emotions, if breathwork enables us to do that, enables us to we're creating a, especially if you work with kids, we're creating a generation that's better informed, right? We can go. Does again, back to that prevention better than cure. Does, like, you're helping people right now, which is amazing. But then the statistics that are still so staggering around suicide. You go, how do we prevent that?
Yeah,
it's tough to cure, right? How do we prevent? And is it that we just bring up a new generation of kids and people that are more able to get in touch with their emotions through breathwork, maybe there's other communication.
Of course, there's more than one thing, isn't there?
But,
you know, there's so much. Sorry, go on.
No, but this is definitely something, obviously, that it clearly works. Right? It's clearly, it's not that I've had this experience in that, but so many other people, some of the stories you've just shared, right, of people that are able to do that. And I think, again, like this, it's just something that wasn't ever spoke about when we were growing up and wasn't aware of. And you go, if you have that, imagine the impact that could have on kids. Because do you do breathwork every single day? Do you go up every single day?
Some way, shape or form. Like, you know, when I talk about teaching kids breathwork, it's not conscious connected breathwork. I just want to make that clear. Sure. But I don't do conscious connected breathwork every day either. I think, you know, like in 2022 I got diagnosed with a brain tumour and I had a heart problem, so I really had to be careful about my own breathwork practice around that time. But breathwork, like I say, is an umbrella term. Like today I woke up, I always check in like with my breath. That's the first thing I think about. I'm breathing, and I'm grateful for that, because without that, none of us are here, right? And just for people listening, like, just that little bit of attention for 1 minute on your breath is super powerful, because
the minute you wake up, like first thing,
because like without your breath, you don't live, right? You know, we can go up to 40 days without food, quite a few days without drinking any water. Not more than a few minutes without your breath, unless you're a freediver. I'm assuming you're probably not that. No. So yeah, but you know, and yet we pay so much attention on the food that we eat and the drinks that we consume, right? But most of us don't pay any attention on how we're breathing. And yeah, we're born breathing, it's automatic. We're probably quite efficient breathers, most of us, when we're born. But over life, through trauma, through stress, through lots of things that are going on and the body trying to survive, our breathing changes. And it doesn't mean just because you're breathing automatically, it doesn't mean it's efficient. And so you can change your breath to really support you. And this is what I'm talking about with children, how it can really support children. But all of us, like, you know, most people will come to breathwork and, you know, they're coming in at an extreme end, but they've not placed any attention on their breath and how they're breathing day to day. You know, you breathe about 23,000 times a day, and most of us are over breathers. We're just breathing too much. Actually, the slower you slow down your breathing, there is a correlation between the slower you breathe, the longer you live. Like, think about that giant tortoise thing. It breathes about 4 times a minute, I think. So. It's true, right? Dogs and cats breathe faster than humans. They don't live as long as humans. Like, but if you slow down your breathing, you're probably going to live a longer life. Not guaranteed, of course. But I forgot the question.
Well, I'll tell you what I find really fascinating, actually, just listening to your story and your journey, and how you've just said about you're creating such a safe environment, a safe space for people to do it, and yet you describe upbringing and in your, I guess, your early part of your life, not being in those environments, and yet you're creating that for so many.
Yeah,
people.
I think that's.
What does your mum? What does your mum think about breathwork? Do you talk to her about?
Don't have those conversations.
Really?
Because my mum's like my dad. You know, we just don't talk about stuff. Like, just don't. It's very surface level kind of stuff, and she's not interested. So, you know, that's just my mum. I just have to accept that. She's not. Yeah, that's just how she is. That's how it's always been, really. But I think, you know, you were talking about being trauma informed and things like that, and me being. Like, someone called me a trauma-informed coach, and I was like, oof, no, I've not done any of that. And then I went away and thought about it, and I thought, actually, and one of the things, and I don't like this, I've got this bit of love-hate with the saying safe space, right? But I get a lot of messages that people say, thank you for creating such a safe space for me to be able to share, for me to be vulnerable, to cry, to laugh uncontrollably, or whatever it is. So I can't ignore that, right? Because people do say that, which is really wonderful. But I think the reason that I do that is, well, I'm being me finally, and I know that I'm more than enough just as I am, and I'm pretty down to earth. But it's because of experience. That, like, my being a trauma-informed coach, which is not a label I would give myself, but like I say, someone gave me, isn't because I've done the academia. It's because of the life that I've lived my lived experience. So it's informed through my lived experience. Abuse and trauma, you know, abuse like racial abuse as a kid, you know, trauma, sexual abuse as a kid, you know, all the experiences, my own kids' trauma that they, you know, and their stories, reading hundreds and hundreds of cases around children that have been abused, and, you know, all of that has informed me and helped me, be in a place where I am, where I hope that I can create environments that people feel able to let go a little bit and to move forward. It's all about letting go and moving forward. And, you know, millions... You see it a lot. Oh, just let that go. Just let, you know, a bit like you were asking me before, where do you start, right, with these things? And where do you start that journey within? And how do you let go? Like, you know, and a lot of people, like, even me years ago, it's like, I don't even fucking know how to let go. What does that even mean? Like, oh, yeah, just let that go. Like, you can't just let it go, right? It's just... The way that I found to let go is with breathwork. It took me far too long to find out, and I wish I found out when I was like 20. And that's why I'm really on a mission, like, to get it out there to the masses, because I wish I had this tool 20, 30 years ago. I honestly do, because it enabled me to let go. Like, let go of that grief and that loss. And the only way to let go was to go through. Like, I was trying to go around, trying to avoid the pain. Basically, that was put me on a one-way ticket out of here. I had to let go, and I didn't know how to let go. But the breathwork showed me the way to let go. And I just see it loads and loads of times, that the way for letting go is through breathwork. You know, I had a beautiful woman come last year. Our neighbour brought her, and her neighbour came to breathwork because he was in a lot of pain, physical pain. He had an operation, went wrong, and actually healed, and then started to get a lot of pain. So they were coming because of the pain in their body. They weren't able to exercise, do their normal day-to-day things, and they came to breathwork, found it hugely beneficial. Eventually the pain went, but they brought their neighbour one week because the neighbour's husband had passed away, like, within 6 hours. Unexpected, came ill, 6 hours later he was gone. And sometimes I get people to come, and I've got my biases, right, my judgments, and I make a judgment, and I just thought, this ain't going to be for her. She stayed for 6 months. She came every week, pretty much for 6 months, and it helped to let go and process the grief. It's undeniable. She, you know, I got a beautiful video testimonial from her, and she was like, I'm just always going to be indebted to you for taking me on this journey. And, you know, and that's not, you know, there's loads of cases around grief that I probably could talk about. But if you want a tool to help you let go, for me and for many, many people, this is the tool. And the trouble is, we, as humans, we're always trying to hold on. Do you know what I mean? And we go back to relationships. you're trying to hold on to that relationship, what? Because you've been in it 30 years. Like, that's not a badge of honour if it's shit and you don't like each other and you speak unkindly to each other. And do you know what I mean? Like, longevity means nothing in a relationship. It's quality, it's value. I'm not saying it's all rainbows and unicorns and romance all the time. No.
It should be more of that than it should be the other.
Exactly, right? So, I think, it's
Get on some breath work.
Yeah, you need to come. I do couples breath work as well. And I have done. I trained in all of it. I trained to do individuals, groups, couples. Yeah, I just went full whammy when I did my training. I thought I'm not just going to learn to do it with individuals. I want to learn to do it with groups and couples as well. So I did it all, and it's really interesting because you have to, when I do it with groups or couples, you do have to create an environment where people feel able to open up without judgment and be able to share their fullest version of themselves. And often we don't know that because we just, like I was talking about that trauma that woman didn't even know she got to 42 and she'd pushed it so far away that that wasn't that happened to me. And then she had to think, did that actually happen to me? She pushed it so far away.
It's suppressing it, and it will come out at some point in some way, whatever that looks like, physically, mentally, whatever that is. We suppress. And again, I keep piping on about it. I do think it's so important for people listening, and that we do start younger. We do teach kids. I do think there's so much.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think. Sorry,
no. I do think there is this thing about teaching breathwork to kids in school. We spoke about this before, and obviously I'm not talking about conscious connected breathwork. I'm just talking about the foundations of breath and using it as a tool, because you're and this is why your breath is directly connected to your nervous system. Your nervous system, if you looked at a diagram of your nervous system, it's unbelievable. Like, it runs through in every part of your body, right? And it's connected to your brain. It's effectively telling your brain what to do. So the one, your breath, or your breathing, your respiratory system is this automatic system, but you have control over it. It's the only system you have that power over to alter. And you can change your breathing rate, the depth, the volume, all sorts of things you can do to your breath to change which part of your nervous system reacts. And the main parts are a parasympathetic side, which is what I call the chill out mode, the rest, the pause, the nice relaxing part that allows you to eat comfortably and sleep deeply and pause and feel good and calm and safe in your body. And then there's the sympathetic side, which is stress and the go mode. Sometimes we need that, right? Sometimes we need a bit of sympathetic nervous system because, like, if we have to run away from something, or we're about to do a running event, we want to be hyped and we want because it's going to help us move quicker and that adrenaline flowing. But what you don't know is that your breath can adjust your nervous system. And this is the bit I'm talking about, emotional agility, to help kids. Just because when we slow our breathing down, and when we have this awareness around it, and we breathe consciously using our diaphragm, everything slows down. Our heart rate variability improves, our blood pressure improves. We're more in a parasympathetic state, so we're more in a calm pause state. And when we're in that calm pause state, what happens is we have more clarity of thinking. We make better conscious choices. We're able to respond rather than react. And if you think every time you think you're going to lose your shit, where's your nervous system? Oh, that'll be you're in the sympathetic, you're in the stress part of your nervous system. You lose your shit. And you don't make good choices in those moments. We all know that, right? I've done it. Like, when I've lost my shit and I'm like, I'm in a sympathetic state and I just have not made the best choice here, right? So it's that ability to regulate yourself so that actually, this is really frustrating and I'm really upset, but let me just, and some people say, just take a breath, but most people don't know how to take a breath to support themselves and how to, push themselves in a more responsive, put themselves, in a more responsive position rather than a reactive one. Sometimes you need that reaction, don't get me wrong, and a little, some sympathetic drive is good for us, right? But we can't afford to be in that sympathetic drive all the time. It's like having a car and having your foot flat to the floor all the time, never changing the oil or cleaning it out or changing a filter, and just eventually it burns out and it breaks down. It like we were talking before, it just snaps, right?
Yeah.
You've got to have more flexibility, and you'll get more flexibility in the parasympathetic side. And this is what I'm talking about with children, like helping them, because sometimes, kids within themselves, like, you don't know what to do with all of this stuff you've got in your body. And yeah, that's great. Kids can scream and shout, and some of that is really good for you. And we do that in breathwork. Sometimes they just have a really good old scream. And they burst out crying afterwards, or they burst out laughing afterwards, because it's probably years since they've done that. I had a guy not that long ago. He came and we did a big scream out, and then he couldn't get off the ground afterwards. Like, everyone had gone, and he said, am I right to stay? And I said, yeah. And we had a hug and we had a chat. He said, I haven't cried in over a decade, and I became a father like 2 years ago. Didn't cry, and so it gives you this. Yeah, it's just this amazing tool. And I just think with kids, imagine it. If you look at in Asia and the continent of Asia, breathwork's really important to them, and people will look at that part of the world and think it's a bit more zen, a bit more chill, right? There's a reason for that. They're more regulated. It's about emotional regulation, personal regulation, and we could help our children regulate themselves better. I'm not saying avoid pain. I'm not saying let's not have a little rage. We all need that every now and again, right? But just to be able to regulate ourselves in the moment, so that we don't lose our shit, so that we don't say the wrong thing sometimes. Like, there always will be times when we do, because we're messy humans. But I used to be quite unregulated. That aggressive kid that's in my school report, I wasn't very well regulated. I didn't know how to manage myself, the emotions that I felt in my body. And that showed up again, really, in 2020. That old self of me, that old version of me. I'm not saying I didn't do anything, I didn't do anything crazy, but I was really struggling to regulate. And then I got this beautiful tool with breathwork, which, helps me in the smallest of moments. When yesterday I was sat at my desk completely overwhelmed with work, and I just stopped, took 5 minutes, I did my breath, and I knew what to do after that. And do you know what I did? Went and cooked me dinner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't do any more work. That's what it showed me. It's like, you are not going to achieve anything of any concrete, of any value here right now. That's what it showed me, just by stopping and breathing. And I was like, I'm just going to cook my dinner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's what I did. Luckily, I had no clients. But, but back to the thing. Breathwork, some of the stuff I'm talking about in this podcast is, it's reactive. A lot of it is reactive breathwork, and it's extreme, some of that transformational stuff. But breath is foundational. It's absolutely foundational, and it can help you manage yourself in so many areas of your life, and regulate yourself and give you emotional agility. It's a foundational tool ultimately, and no one's teaching kids this foundational tool. Just because it's automatic doesn't mean it's efficient. Sometimes your breath can work against you rather than for you. When you're breathing in your upper chest and you're breathing fast, that is not breathwork. If you're sedentary, and if we're sitting here like this having a nice relaxed conversation, obviously sometimes we need it to be faster. But in situations like this, or we're at our desk, if we're holding our breath or we're breathing all in our upper chest, we're driving our sympathetic nervous system. This is not beneficial for us. This is not beneficial for efficient breathing, for mental health, that's a whole other topic about breath work. For our heart health, our brain health, our overall well-being comes from our breathing. It's the first form of nutrition that we can control. Everyone thinks it's food and drink. Well, the sun is a form of nutrition. We can't control that. But the second bit, or the one that we can control, is our breath. Because if you're in sympathetic drive all the time, do you think your digestive system wants you to eat? No. Do you think it's going to process you're probably going to shove food in. It's not going to process it so well, because you need to be in a more parasympathetic state. That's rest and digest. Digest means I'm ready to eat. I can eat well. And when it's the same with sleep, I could talk about this shit all day. Like, when you go to sleep at night and you're stressed and you're overthinking, you sleep with your mouth wide open, your nervous system is in sympathetic drive. So what that means is your brain's job is it's survival. It's not thinking about a deep sleep, and it's not thinking about clearing out all that psychological clutter that you've got from the day that needs clearing out. That psychological clutter gets cleared at night when you sleep, but only when you sleep deeply in a parasympathetic way. So when you're calm, because when you're calm and you relax before you go to sleep, you go into a deep sleep. When you go into a deep sleep, the brain's not concerned about surviving. It's concerned about clearing out the mental clutter. There's a thing called the glymphatic system. and that is basically like your trash clearing system for the brain. That only kicks in when you're in a deep sleep. Well, if you're mouth breathing too fast, stressed and overthinking, your brain is not given the time to do its job that it needs to do, because it's too busy worrying about surviving because you're in sympathetic mode. And why that's really important and why I raise that is, when your brain doesn't get to do its clearing out job at night in deep sleep, it can lead to Alzheimer's and dementia and poor memory. Which we know, obviously there's a lot of talk around dementia and Alzheimer's, and you know we're becoming more aware of those things. So it's something that, you know, this we were talking before, when it's success and badge of honour, it all comes back to that really, doesn't it, Sam? Like if you think about it, you know, your mate, well, no, you know, I can't be vulnerable. I would not want to be in that person's body. Like, I can't. Maybe they're this unique person that can live like that. But I think, how are you sleeping? How are you breathing? And what's happening inside your body day in, day out? You know, because there's got to be suppression there. I can't, because effectively they're saying that because they're saying I can't do that.
I can't feel that.
I can't let that be seen.
Yeah. And that's,
so there's suppression there. Well, suppression takes force, takes effort, and it's going to come from your nervous system. Of you like, well, you're to keep that. It's like, surely there's more stress and more tension there. Well, there's more stress and more tension, then you're in more sympathetic drive.
It's so fascinating.
It's a minefield.
And I'll definitely. There's a couple of things we're coming towards it, and this I could chat to you for ages.
Yes, me too.
Episode 2 is coming soon.
Yeah, let's do part 2.
But a couple of things. I guess one. Firstly, I just want to. If someone is at the minute listening, struggling a bit, grief or whatever, what could you tell them? Like something practically, just getting up tomorrow. One thing they could do that would, if you could do anything, what would it be?
Yeah, it's going to come back to breath, really. Like I think we touched on a little bit ago about how you start up your day, and I'm someone who always says today's a non-refundable day, right? Which is difficult to feel like when you're going through a lot of grief. So I get that, and I wish I'd known what I know then when I was going through all my grief that I do now. But I think, just notice your breath. Place one hand on your tummy, one hand on your chest. Just notice the sensations of breathing. It's just called breath awareness. That's all it's called. Just have some awareness that you've got breath in your body. You want, and this is really important last thing at night for the reasons I just said around the lymphatic system and the clearing out of the psychological trash. You need to do this before you go to sleep at night. Do a breathing pattern. There's 2 things I'd say to people, like if we're coming to the end really. Close your mouth. So like you're sitting there with your mouth closed. This is how you want to breathe day to day. This is your superpower.
In through your nose?
Yeah, through your nose and keep your mouth shut. In and out through your nose. This is the most efficient way for us to breathe. The nose is designed for us to breathe, not the mouth. The nose has 30 functions. It filters the air, humidifies it, warms it before it hits the lungs. This is what you want to do, right? And also the tongue is on the roof of the mouth. This enables you to probably connect into your diaphragm, so you're breathing diaphragmatically. Again, this is how you want to be breathing, so that your tummy extends when you breathe in, goes back in when you breathe out. What that means is you're getting more oxygen into the lower parts of your lung, that you're breathing deeper, where more of the air sacs are in the lower parts of your lungs. But as you go about your day-to-day life, breathe nasally as much as possible. Like I say, it filters the air. You'll breathe much more efficiently, and you'll probably can take in up to 20% more oxygen that way. When you mouth breathe, that taps into the sympathetic nervous system, so you're rattled. You're not able to regulate yourself so well. It's not as efficient. There's no protection through mouth breathing. There's no filtration. There's no your air doesn't get humidified or anything. Your mouth is for talking and eating and drinking. That's it. So that could change your life, just shutting your mouth and breathing like that day to day. I appreciate when you're exercising and stuff like that, then the mouth's probably going to take a part. But there's a whole, and actually when you sleep at night, you want to tape. I mouth tape. That's a whole nother conversation to keep my mouth closed, because I used to be a snorer. So if you're breathing with your mouth wide open and you're snoring at night, you lose 40% more moisture when you breathe, up to 42 I think it is, when you breathe through your mouth. but you're breathing through your mouth, so you're breathing shallower and faster. You're in sympathetic drive. Your brain doesn't get to do its cleaning out system, okay? So this is why we don't want to be mouth breathing at night. So number one tip, breathe through your nose as much as possible, okay, night and day. And then this breathwork technique, if someone's struggling and they just want to do a simple breathwork technique, do this before you go to bed at night, or when you're in bed at night, when you wake up in the morning. Breath awareness, so just notice what your breath is doing. Does it feel up in my chest? Does it feel shallow, rattly? Can I feel my stomach extending? Can I feel the air coming in out of my nose? Just give it some conscious attention. You're trying to make friends with your breath is what I say. How do you make friends with anyone? You nurture it, right? You give it some attention. This is all I want you to do for 1 minute. And then you do a thing called coherent breathing, which is one of the breathwork techniques I absolutely love. And the reason we do this technique, and I'll show it to you in a second, is it gets everything in sync. So your lungs, your heart, your brain, and your metabolic system all become aligned and all become in sync through breathing in this way. And it really slows down your breathing, which is, as I said before, we want to really slow down our breathing. We're all over breathers. Well, not all of us, but quite a lot of us do breathe too much. And all you're doing is you're breathing in for a count of 5 and you're breathing out for a count of 5. So it's that synchronization, coherent, right? We're just making, and we're bringing everything into sync. And it's a really powerful, simple breathwork technique. And I was talking to someone the other day who had chronic fatigue. They didn't work with me, they worked with themselves and other doctors. And they did coherent breathing, 20 minutes at night, 20 minutes first thing in the morning, and massively helped reduce their chronic fatigue syndrome. So this is a really powerful one. But what this is doing is slowing down your breathing. It's helping you be in more sympathetic, parasympathetic state, so more calm. You're calming yourself down. You're telling your body it's safe. You're telling your body it's okay. If you practice this little breathwork routine consistently, I promise you, you will feel different. Because you want to go into your day as calmly as possible, you know, whether we're grieving or feeling overwhelmed. This is how you start in that state. And it's the same at night for the reasons around memory and clearing out the brain as well. You want to go into a deep sleep. So, like I say, you're just breathing in for a count of 5, breathing out for a count of 5. You can start at 4 if that's a little bit of a struggle. And then once you can get from 4, you can do 4 quite comfortably, go to 5, and you can even go 6 in, 6 out. There is, if you look on Spotify and you just put in 2 bells or coherent breathing, you can get a piece of music that chimes. So you don't have to count. Wow. There is a lot of science that's shown that the optimal rate of breath is 5.5 breaths per minute. So 1 in and out is 1 breath. And that's the optimal rate. And this synchronizes everything. So that's why coherent breathing is this beautiful thing. And it really connects you to your heart. And for a lot of people with grief and love, maybe for you, Sam, actually, it'd be really good for you to do. It really connects you to your heart because it connects everything together. It syncs everything together. And so you can find this piece of music. There's a few versions of it, and it will just dong, and it will just chime. And when the chime changes, you breathe out. And you just do it in sync to it. It's super relaxing. But what's happening is you're creating this beautiful internal synchronization. And build up to that. Like, I never used to be able to sit there and do it for 20 minutes. I can do that now. But in the beginning, it was like 2 minutes if I'm lucky. Like, I was a shit meditator, and now I can meditate. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't meditate. But I found breathwork, which is better, in my opinion. So, yeah, I would say that those are the 2 things. If you're struggling, your affairs of the heart, grief, or anything like that, this is how you want to bookend your day. You don't have to think about it. You just listen to the chimes. And what's happening is your body takes over. The synchronization happens, really helps with the heart and creates efficient breathing. And, you know, for me, with my brain tumour and stuff like that, like, I really want my breath to be as efficient as possible. I really want my blood to be, you know, oxygenate, you know, create that oxygen efficiency because our brain really needs it. You know, our brain only weighs 2% of our body weight, but takes 20% of our oxygen supply. You need to be breathing well. And that, again, that will impact your focus, your clarity, your thinking, your responses. You have to think about your brain. And if you're not breathing efficiently, you're not getting enough oxygenated blood to your brain because your brain has this huge oxygen supply. And breathing efficiently is so important for your brain, but so important for your life, because like I say, it affects how you show up, right? It affects how you think,
It's amazing,
your decision making.
Something where you think that the simplest thing that we take for granted, actually how complex it can be when and actually how much it can impact us, and how much it does impact us, right? And actually how regulating, because I'm really keen as well, what would, like, you've mentioned a few times about being so deregulate when you in your childhood. What would you if you could go back and speak to that child, what would you say?
Do you know what, I always think that's a really tough question. And I've done a few sort of breathwork things around that, and like little me, I'm really aware of little me. Like, I'm aware that I carry little me with me all the time. Like, when I feel this rejection or not good enough, I know it's little me. And that's been good for me to have that awareness. Going back to my younger self, what would I say? It's a bit cliche, really, but I guess it's just, it's okay to be you. You know, it's okay to be cheeky, bit loud, vulnerable. It's okay to want love. Like, I think it's just that, because I always was just masking as a kid. You know, just I showed up quite cheeky and aggressive. Can't let that one go. But there was a lot of masking and wanting to be liked, and actually, probably this is what I say, the most important to like you is the person looking back at you in the mirror. And there was a lot of me not liking myself as a kid, and something along those lines. Nothing too profound, I'm afraid.
I guess not. Listening to you and the amazing work that you're doing now and helping people change their lives, right? And I guess that going through what you have done and coming out the other side and being here, I guess just that you're enough, right?
Yeah.
Just as you are. I think that's so important for anyone, like even when you're wherever you are.
It's so hard for us, though, right? To feel like we're enough, to feel good enough, and so many people come across that feel like that. I mean, I guess I thought I was doing quite a good job, to be honest with you, a few years ago, and obviously, and then 2022 when I got, I had my health problems, and the heart got fixed. The brain tumour's still there, sadly, but I think I did stop and think in my life, and I was thinking, I thought I was doing a really good job of showing up as me and really embracing life. But honestly, get yourself a brain tumour and you realise you probably could do better, do you know what I mean? And actually it really kind of does, you do take the lid off a little bit. Well, I have. I can't speak for anyone else who's got any long-term, health challenges. But for me, it's like, what does it freaking matter? Like, what does it matter? Like, I feel like I have a ticking time bomb, so it's just like...
What is happening with that then, like with the brain tumour?
He just Timmy, his name is. I've called him Timmy. I'm trying to befriend him because I don't want him to play up. Because, he's up the top of the crown of my head. I just have to have regular brain scans, so I've been having every 6 months I've been having a brain scan, because he's in a little tricky spot where it's not super big, but it's where he is. He's near a thing called a venous sinus, which is like a blood highway, so, through the brain. And so if he's already encroaching on that, and he can't really afford to encroach too much, because then that creates pressure in the brain and then starts to impact things like your vision, seizures, balance, speech, all of those things. So that's why he's scanned every 6 months, because it's probably not going to be able to operate on him because of where it is. so obviously, if he does start to grow or encroach even more, then have to have radiotherapy to try and reduce that down, because a lot of the tumours like I've got are cut away, but in this circumstance I might not be able to have that done. So that's why he just gets scanned. But I'm fine. I get a little bit of when I lie completely flat, which is a pain for breath work because you're supposed to be lying completely flat, and I do have to be a little bit careful. I get quite nauseous and quite lightheaded, so I've had to just adjust how I do that. And sometimes that nausea, if I forget, or sometimes I just get a bit of nausea. But to be honest with you, and I get headaches, which I never used to get before, like horrific headaches. Not very often, thankfully. And I get tired. But I think maybe is that age? Is it a tumour, or is it where I have my heart repaired? It's like, I don't know. It's probably none of those things. It's nothing to do with Timmy. He's just living his best life rent free of my bloody brain. But yeah, so it's all good. It's all good. It's just it's more the psychology. Like lots of things in life, Sam. It's the psychology of it. It's the psychological effects that has on you. No, like you look at me and think, oh well, I'm pretty. You look okay, kind of thing. But somebody asked me this question, a question around it. What is it I wish people knew about living with a brain tumour? And I'm like, I wish they knew how much mental fuckery I actually have to deal with, because you get, and that's just my personal experience. Like if I lose my balance, I stumble on my speech, or I get a bit of blurred vision, my brain then catastrophizes. It's like, oh shit, like it's growing. Or do you know that and then that kind of stays with you. When I found out about the encroachment, so they didn't tell me about that to begin with. They just said I had a brain tumour and I got blah blah. And then I found out that it was actually encroaching on this thing that it shouldn't be. Like for 2 days, like my brain just would not shut up. Like, and it just is tiring. So luckily, I don't have too much of that. I've learnt to live with it. For the first year probably was hell. Didn't sleep very well, used a lot of breath work to get into my deep sleep, a lot of mouth taping at night, but now I don't think about it every day, thankfully. It's just if something happens, like I say, that can be hard sometimes, or if you hear about something about a brain tumour, or you hear about sometimes in your brain will just go off on one. And then the other part of that is the scans. So leading up to the scan, you'll sort of like start to get a bit anxious. Don't like having an MRI scan either, but I've learned to manage the MRI scan with my breath work. Used to take diazepam, now I just do breath work. It's amazing. Same for flying, actually. I used to have really bad fly. I used to take diazepam, now I just do breath work. It's amazing. Come off the meds, don't need it. And so, yeah, so you have this anxiety running up. So again, that psychological, it takes its toll. And then once you've had the scan, then you have to wait in to see your neurosurgeon. So it's then that plays on your mind. So there's this period of time. It was quite a lot of time. It can be like 3 months, and then I'm actually having a scan again soon. So that's probably the thing. That it's just sometimes that the mental fuckeries, as I call them, they can be a bit tiring. But on the whole, I'm good. And like I said, I realised thought I was doing a good job of living, but it wakes you up. It's like, actually, and I get a bit frustrated because there's so much that I want to do, and I think that was one of the overriding thoughts I had when I found out about the tumour. It's like, because your brain just thinks you're going to die, like I'm going to die. It's like, shit, there's so much I want to do, like there's so much more that I've got left to do. That was really a lot of my big thoughts when I first found out about it. So I'm still trying to figure out some of the ways to get to do all of these other things I want to do, but it's all a little bit more urgent now. And there's this level of urgency that comes with it, but there's also this kind of level of just do you, because it doesn't really matter anyway.
Sam, thank you so much.
Honestly. You, Sam.
Thank you for just showing up today as you and sharing everything authentically, honestly, openly, and honestly, it's been such a fascinating. I just almost can't wait to go back over it and just pick out all the gold that you've shared. I'm so grateful. we've got a closing tradition on the podcast. I don't know if you've seen that, and a new one for the Series 8. Here we go. So these are our storytelling cards.
Okay.
So I need you to choose one. Pick a card, any card, and pass it back to me.
I think it's this one.
That one. Pass it back. Right. Okay. Ooh, okay. When was the last time you had to forgive yourself, and how did it change your outlook?
I think it's between me and my partner. We had a period apart, 3 months, and I wasn't the best version of myself towards the end. We're back together, obviously, we're 3 months apart, but yeah, I wasn't the best version of myself towards the end of that, and I had awareness that I wasn't being, and that made me more frustrated, I think, I think I definitely had to give myself some forgiveness about, because I gave myself a hard time about that. There seems to be a bit of a theme around that, about how I showed up, and in order, for us to move forward, I had to forgive myself for that. I always took responsibility for it, but it was something that I could carry on and carry forward, and so I had to forgive myself around that. And I think going forward, we have monthly therapy, just as something that's just something we do. I think it's really I'm more accepting of a part of me that's actually I'd probably wish was less messy, but actually that acceptance has been really good for us as a couple, as a relationship. I've got my blueprint, she's got hers. Do you know what I mean? It's me accepting that whilst I don't like it, and there's no point me, there's just no point me giving myself a hard time about it. There's reasons for it. It is a part of my blueprint. Accepting that sometimes I can behave in that way, but actually where it stems from and the blueprint of that actually has been really good for us. And actually it's just helped me embrace that, the more messy stuff again, like we've spoken about on this podcast, is like, we're all messy, and it's okay for me to have these really messy parts too. I'm not a bad person. I try to come from a good place, and I think it's just allowed me to embrace more messiness, really, and that, I think,
Brilliant.
That's it, really.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. Absolute
It's been
pleasure.
absolutely amazing. I can't wait to share this episode, so thanks again. And that, as they say, is a wrap.